is going to be part 2. We were just talking about our strange encounter with the Shadow Man and some of the odd things that have been going on in and around the house before and after that. Some of the weird things, radios that shouldn't have been working were working, and odd whispering in the home, odds and ends, the cat's obviously going crazy. And then there was something else about a shadowy cat that I wasn't there for. Go ahead.
Yes, this occurred that same weekend that I was alone there. That was a really rough weekend for me because as much as I believed absolutely in the paranormal, when it's actually happening to you, you like for there to be an explanation. And these were becoming things I had no explanation for. By that night, after the thing, the radio in the garage, which really terrified me.
It's pretty blatant.
Yeah, I was not good. Anyway, so I have to try to go to sleep that night. And I decide, I'm going to turn on a movie and all the lights and make myself as comfortable as possible. And the cats were acting up, and, I was just not going to get comfortable. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. I'm acting like a child. I have all the lights on. Was the boogeyman going to get me? Kind of like, what's going on? So I turn off the lights and I leave the movie on and I get ready to try to go to bed. And from in the kitchen, I see some movement, which I assume is one of my cats because they've been running around and acting crazy all night. And I go to get one of them to, this movement is dark. Let me say that, by the way, and it's small, just like one of my cats. And anyway, I go into the kitchen to retrieve one of the cats, thinking that it's just acting crazy, and I'm going to pull it into the living room and get it to calm down, make it sit with me. And I go to grab it the next time I see the movement, because it's dark in there, so I'm going by the shadows cast by the light from the other room. And I go to pick it up because I think I see it right there. And my fingers go right through it. My hands end up touching each other. And it looked solid as my little black cat I had at the time. I had a black cat. That's why I assumed it was my black cat running around acting crazy. And I quickly stand up and I go back to the living room. And lo and behold, the black cat's already in the living room. Some of them finally went to sleep together in a pile, and sure enough, she was right there. And I'm like, okay, I've had enough. This is just too much. This day's too much for me, and I'm going to try to call it a night. And, eventually get myself calmed down. It's really late. I finally lay down on the couch. I didn't want to sleep in any of the bedrooms, not my mom's or my brother's or the spare one that I stayed in sometimes, but that there was a futon in. I didn't want to sleep in any of them. I can't tell you, other than just the complete, utter, just being uncomfortable, not wanting to be in any of those rooms. None of them. So I sleep in the living room on the couch. I make a pallet and all that on the couch. And I remember I finally pulled the blanket over my head and I was just like, enough's enough. Enough's enough. I'm just going to go to sleep. And just like when, you're sleeping next to somebody that's close in the same bed with you, I could hear breathing directly on my ear, like somebody was right there. And I wanted to scream. I wanted to sit up and scream and run out, and then I was like, you know what? It's me. It's me. I'm hearing myself breathe, so I'm going to hold my breath right now. And I tell myself, hold my breath. And then I hear it anyway. And that was it. I started to get very upset. And I don't remember whether I even took the blanket off me or not. I don't think I did. I think I remember I kept the blanket on me, wrapped around me, and I ran out the front door. I didn't even look around. I ran directly out the front door and I stood on my porch. And I mean, I don't know if anybody saw me out there, but I must have looked like a lunatic standing in my pajamas with a blanket wrapped around me, running out of my own house and afraid to go back inside.
I don't think anybody who's ever been anywhere close to that isn't worried about that at all. That's every story I've ever heard, basically, is you see the thing or, whatever you're seeing goes down and then you run out of the house. It doesn't matter what you're wearing. But there was another thing here, and this happened right in the last few days of his life. One of many odd things. It was a dream that your brother had. That eventually, apparently, this stuff started disturbing him enough. And this, remember, was right in the last few days. But he was apparently now disturbed enough he decided to actually tell you about this quote-unquote dream.
Yes, I remember I was having a confrontation that I was afraid was going to turn into an argument when I was confronting him about there were things obviously going on in the house I wasn't aware of or didn't have the full knowledge of. And I was like, have you gotten in trouble with anyone? I mean, did you cheat with some woman and the husband's after you? Are you involved with bad people? What is going on? You're going to have to be straight with me. I don't know what to make of all this, because I should mention, I'll go into this more detail into how he changed, but paranoid isn't the word. He was saying all kinds of things. He had been seeing hooded figures during the daytime. So that's why I had asked him the question, are you involved with some bad people? Or someone after you for some reason? Have you done something? What is going on? And he tells me about this dream. He asks me to begin with, he's like, do you think dreams really mean things? Or, does your brain just make it up? And I said, well, I'm not an expert, but I do think they can have substance, and I think it can have meanings. What kind of dream, per se? And he was very agitated, and he seemed, in a way, to want to tell me and not want to tell me. So he proceeds to tell me about this very disturbing dream he has when he hears noises coming from the kitchen. And he goes in the kitchen, and there was a long counter in the kitchen that some appliances were on, and the sink and all that. And we had a very long rectangular style kitchen, and the counters were long. And he said, as he walked into the kitchen, sitting on one of the counters was what he described to me to look like a black devil-like figure. Just for an image, if you've ever seen that show Futurama, the robot devil, it was sort of like how he described the face of it was very long. And he didn't say it had horns, but he described it to me as if it had long ears. And he was motioning beside his head as he was talking to me, describing it. And I was just like, well, my goodness, that's just a terrifying thing. What did you do? What happened? And he said the figure sat there and that its legs went down the counter, that it seemed to be tall and a sort of lean creature, not a big bulky thing, but a lean thing. And he described that it had some kind of claws and that it was tapping its nails or claws, whatever you want to call it, on the counter, and it was looking at him, and it was smiling at him, and he seemed very, very disturbed. And anybody in their right mind would be terrified. And I kept expecting that he would say he did something or said something. And I mean, today I would have told him he should call on Jesus Christ immediately. But sadly, I didn't say that at the time. I didn't know what to say. I was shocked, and he seemed very disturbed, and it seemed very real to him. And the really weird thing, beyond that weirdness, is after he tells me this story, the next morning, I wake up and I go into the kitchen to get myself a soda out of the fridge. And as I go in, there is the biggest mess I've ever seen in my life. It looked like Motley Crue came in there and had a condiment throwing party. Literally, almost every single thing in the fridge had been opened, poured on the counter, dripped down the cabinet. Just, it made no sense. Like the things that were everywhere didn't go together. So it's not like somebody got drunk and made a sandwich or something, just left a mess. It was really bizarre. Deliberate and bizarre. And I was mad. I remember being very mad because this was a huge mess I had to clean up. And, I was looking at replacing most of those things. They weren't going to be any good anymore. They'd sat out all night, And I remember waking my mom up, being mad enough about it. I went into her room and shook her, not hard, but enough to wake her. And I was like, Mom, who was in the kitchen? What is going on in there? There's the biggest mess I've ever seen. I was going on, and she was very tired, and she just kind of was like, I don't know, somebody must have made a mess or something. I'll just use the word glib, some very little, just glib comment, like it was nothing. And I was ready to not clean it. I was so mad. I was just like, whoever did this is going to clean this up. I'm not cleaning this up. And then as I started to clean it up, I couldn't help but think about that dream and how much it scared him, and I have to say, I've hunted with my brother. I've, pretty much done it all. And he was not one to be afraid of much, and he didn't put too much stock in anything like that. Like if someone would have told him that, he guarantee probably would have just said, well, you imagined it, or you saw it in a movie or something like that. But the image he described is very sinister. I mean, you don't have to be an occultist to know that is a very, very sinister sounding being.
And isn't it funny? I mean, how many times in different stories, specifically shadowy, spooky, hooded, whatever you want to have, hat man, whatever, I keep hearing about them being in the kitchen, messing around in the kitchen or the bathroom. So I'm thinking, is this some kind of they need to be near water, or what's going on? Is it a conduit? I don't know. But I do hear that again and again.
I have too.
Specifically, I seem to recall some of you out there will remember the Ed and Lorraine Warren books, Demonologists and such, and these shadow figures that would appear in these cases they were working on. But this was before Shadow Man was a name that
Mm-hmm.
something that you'd heard about specifically. And they would tell these same things. They can be tall, they can be small. A lot of times they'd be little, like maybe only 2 or 3 feet tall, which made them even stranger. And I seem to recall people talking about going down to the kitchen. That it was sitting on the counter, not necessarily sitting on the counter, but it was in the kitchen doing something. It was looking through the icebox. It was, and I don't know. It's just, I assume the only thing I can really assume is they do it just because it's weird. It's not weird enough that they look like what they look like. They need to really, really make your story sound crazy.
Oh, yes. I think that's part of it, is that was part of my dismay this whole time is what exactly will I say to somebody? How do I make this not sound crazy.
You don't. You
And
basically don't.
they know that. We're talking, I'm convinced like what we're talking about is demons here. And these things are thousands of years old, and they know all the tricks, and they'll try anything. And I totally think that when people say, these spirits were their dead relative or what, and as god awful as that is for something to happen to somebody, don't you believe it? They're in paradise. They're not stuck here. It doesn't work that way. And I think they play on people. My brother, he absolutely, I cannot sugarcoat that. Once he moved here to Texas, he was a changed man. He had some strange minor issues when we were growing up, but mellowed out a lot in his youth, his young adulthood. But when he moved here, everything changed. He became a totally different kind of person.
I remember your mom and you both telling me, kind of apologetically saying, I wish you had known him before because this person is nothing like the person he used to be.
Yes.
And I have to say, I mean, I didn't want to be mean about it at the time, but the person he was when I knew him, and not a person I wanted to be around. He
was hostile, and he got very hostile. He could be scary. He had become somebody I was keeping my eye on, and I didn't like that. And that's why, the first time in my life I'd ever been happy when I met you, and it became a big deal that I was wanting to live with you and spend my time with you and get a life going on my own. And that was an issue. There was this very.
I could definitely see the lines were drawn there.
Oh yes, I mean they called.
And that's really weird because I loved her mom. We got along great. She was just a very cool person. But I tell you, just as surely as he changed moving here into that house, more specifically, she changed when she moved into that house with her. And I couldn't believe that I was talking to the same person sometimes. She would just go off. One time in particular, the details don't even matter. It's just that she called, screaming. I just couldn't believe it was her. I actually had to get on the phone and shut her down. Then I ended up arguing with him on the phone, and this was all just in the day, a few days that week, really before, because I did see her again after that, and she did want to apologize for all that, but still, it was completely out of character. I mean, and I can't ignore the fact that it all goes down as soon as they're in that house.
Things started unraveling.
I'm not saying that there wasn't something else maybe following them, but man, that house was the worst place they could have.
I think it was a perfect storm. The house itself
was, a perfect storm of badness. The house was bad. There was bad following them. And I'll say it again, I hated that house. I couldn't stand to be in that house. And even before any of this made it obvious, I would sit outside on the patio the entire time if I could. I'd sit in the car and listen to the radio if it wouldn't have been rude, because I couldn't stand to be in that house.
It had an oppressive atmosphere. I was very disappointed that it wasn't turning out to be our dream house or something like that, because we wanted very much for our mother to have a nice place to live and, to be taken care of. So, it was very disappointing that things were not working out. He was having a lot of personal issues. He had just gotten a divorce after just getting married. Not, I want to say something like 6 months, 5 months, something like that. Not very long they were married, not even a year. And they got divorced, and my mom ends up moving in there with him. And then things just really went downhill.
Fast.
Very fast. Between this dream, there were his behavior. He was, like I said, he was very aggressive. Once he moved into that house, it became obvious he had a substance abuse problem. I'm not ashamed to say it. I don't think anybody in America doesn't know somebody with some kind of issue. And I want to make it clear, though, that I don't deny that messed with his mind, but these were not just hallucinations.
Well, I think the drugs are just like it's just kind of like weakening the immune system, so to speak. It's
Yes.
not. It's not. I know what a person would want to say, and for all the reasons why you'd want to say, well, you're dealing in some heavy drugs, and there can be hallucinations and things like that. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm sure he had some substance related things, but I'm telling you, there were some things that he can't project out into your eyes.
Oh, absolutely.
Things were going on. If it had just been that, anybody could have written it off. But it's clear, from the inside and seeing some of the things we saw ourselves, this was all just perfect. And that's why I mentioned that they had found those really old syringes in that house, is because, we're talking about, substance abuse and stuff. And it seemed to me like he didn't, and this problem, he didn't have this problem when he moved into that house.
No.
This that developed after. And I'm just starting to think in terms of, you could say it like the monkey on your back, the bad spirit makes you do bad things. And I mean, if he was already, call it spiritually weakened, when he got into that house, and it seems to me from what was found in that place and what could be discerned from it, and the fact that I hated it, it was a heavy place. It was a dark and heavy place. That's all I can say. And you can just see the tree of things as it got worse, being the longer in that house. And of course, he was the one who got the worst of anybody as far as some of this weirdness, and he was in the house the longest. And I don't think it's a coincidence. And so, yeah, I mean, whether you want to call it a demon, or you want to say whatever, egregore, personally, I think it's a demon, and I think it's fully intelligent. It sits there and it works whatever it can work to ruin you. If there was already some nastiness in that house, well, it just joined in the fun. I mean, like I said, he already had some things going on. There was a background of some, call it occult belief systems in the family, which
yes,
could, you just can't mess with that stuff. You don't know what's going to end up following you around. Anybody who's telling you any kind of truth is going to tell you that.
That could be a whole separate talk in itself about what was actually going on in my family and how I was raised. But I do want to say, the drugs can be the doorway that they can step in. And I think they worked him backwards and forwards. I think they worked on his paranoia. I think, it was different. It could be different for everybody. For me, it made me very hard to make a decision, indecisive. It made me very indecisive, which is usually not my nature. If I want to do something or I have an idea and I think it's solid, I go forward, But this house made me very indecisive. If I needed to go to the store, I would debate about it for way too long. Well, should I go now or should I go later? Well, I don't know. Just ridiculous things that shouldn't be a big deal.
The place clouded your head.
Yes, it made it very hard for me to leave, which was crazy because I was happy when I was gone from that house, when I was with him, and everything would be really good and I would be myself. But when I was in that house, it was just a horrible oppression. My brother hardly slept, which, some of that is substance related, but some of it was way beyond anything I've ever even heard of.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about an intelligence that's working the things of this world to ruin you, well, then it well knows about sleep deprivation. It knows how to weaken the mind, and you get the spirit weak, and it's like that immune system break where they can get in.
Well, and there was a couple of things to mention that he was seeing these days before. He's seeing these hooded figures, and at first nobody sees them during the daytime, but then my mom tells me she's seeing them, and that's very, very strange because the last night before they died, I was there the night before, and I remember there was a very strange incident, and I looked, there was a tall window in the kitchen, and I heard a noise or something. I think it was rustling in the leaves, and this was fall because it's November, and my attention was directed towards that window, and it's very tall window high up, so I'm short. I got a chair and I looked out that window, and from the chair I could look into the neighbor's yard, and on the other side of the fence there appeared to be a fellow in a hoodie, a pullover sweatshirt, a dark hoodie. And then I saw him light a cigarette. It looked just like somebody lighting a cigarette. I could see a face, a white Caucasian face, if you want to put it that way. And I became very scared because I see a real person there. And I now have the lovely job of telling my semi-crazed brother that there's a guy on the other side of the fence, and I see him, and I'm sure I see him. And I'm thinking, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know, is this a group of people here to rob us? Perhaps. I don't know.
What I don't understand about that, though, before I can see the questions forming in people's minds. Not a very smart robber.
No, I agree.
Hang out in apparently the neighbor's yard or the alleyway behind. And also, apparently, as you'll get into, robbers that eventually only can be seen by him and then later her mom. And when it's dark and it's night, you can say, okay, well, maybe I'm missing something when I'm looking out there, but you're not really seeing. Beyond that, you saw a guy.
That's it. Yeah. I could not see.
But beyond that, they're pointing out lots of other things or other guys.
Yes.
And you're not seeing them. Really, even into the point where the sun's starting to come up and he's still saying, no, I'm watching him. He's right there.
So when that happens, and I do immediately tell him, well, we go into red alert, and everybody gets armed. Yeah, it's very strange, but just if you were in the situation, you would probably understand. Anyway,
part was just playing along.
Well,
with him because
I feared for my life. I mean, I was prepared to use a weapon should anybody come in that house. I did not want to. I was praying and hoping that this was all a big mistake, that if this was a robber or something, that he would lose his nerve. So I had the idea, I'll turn on all the lights in the house at once. So anybody outside would know, we know you're there, bugger off, kind of thing. But that's all I could think of. And I didn't want to be in the dark should they come in.
Well, no, if there's actually someone out there, you turn the lights on, you make them as uncomfortable as possible.
And I thought, this goes on, for a few hours. And slowly but surely, I become sure no one's there. I satisfy myself that whoever was there must have fled. But we still keep hearing rustling in the leaves. But I fully say that could have been a cat. There were cats that lived all over that neighborhood. But it was just enough to keep you jumping. And I saw a shadow in the window in my brother's room that night that I was sure was a person. And it terrifies me to even think about it because I was ready to, follow through on some kind of action should my family be endangered.